The glass doors of Meridian Trust slid open with a sigh that sounded too much like dismissal. Loretta Gaines stepped inside anyway. She was dressed the way she always dressed when something mattered. A pressed navy coat, a scarf the color of dried marigolds, sensible shoes that didn't make noise because she had never needed to announce herself to be real. The bank's lobby gleamed like a museum display. Polished stone floors, a wall of screens listing interest rates like commandments, a scent of citrus and money. And the eyes. They hit her before the warmth did. A man in a gray suit paused mid-laugh near the coffee station. A young couple in athleisure turned, then turned away too quickly. Behind the counter, 3 employees looked up in unison like they'd rehearsed it. Loretta held her folder to her chest as if it could protect her from assumptions. She walked to the nearest teller window. "Good morning," she said, voice steady. "I have an appointment with Mr. Carver." The teller blinked once, twice. Her name tag read Kelsey in neat white letters. Kelsey's smile arrived late and thin. "And you are?" "Loretta Gaines." A pause that lasted just long enough to become a verdict. Kelsey glanced over Loretta's shoulder, as if expecting someone else to appear, someone who matched the lobby. "Mr. Carver is very busy today," Kelsey said. "What is the appointment regarding?" Loretta's fingers tightened around the folder. "A small business loan. For a commercial kitchen and storefront." Kelsey's smile stiffened. "Can I see your ID?" Loretta slid her driver's license across the counter. Kelsey picked it up with 2 fingers, as though it were damp. She stayed at it, then at Loretta, then at it again. "You're 68, Kelsey said, like she'd discovered something suspicious. Loretta didn't flinch. "That's correct. And you're applying for a business loan?" "Yes." Kelsey leaned back, lowering her voice in a way that made it louder. "Do you have someone with you?" She hesitated, eyes flicking to the folder. "A co-signer? A family member?" Loretta's chin lifted a fraction. "No, I'm the applicant." Kelsey's gaze slid down Loretta's coat, her shoes, her scarf. It came back up with a practiced politeness that carried a blade. "One moment," Kelsey said. She walked away with Loretta's license. Loretta stood in the middle of the lobby, hands empty now, waiting. The screens on the wall flashed. "Welcome to Meridian Trust. Your future starts, hey." Behind her, someone cleared their throat and muttered, "They let anybody in these days." Loretta pretended she didn't hear. A man in a blue blazer approached from a side hallway, moving fast, his expression already irritated. His hair was slicked into obedience. His tie was the kind that cost more than Loretta's entire outfit, and he wore it like a crown. "Ms. Gaines?" he said, but it sounded like an accusation. "Yes," Loretta answered. "I'm Todd Carver." He didn't offer his hand. "Follow me." He didn't wait to see if she followed. He just turned and walked. Loretta walked after him. Every step echoed now, though her shoes were still quiet. It was the silence around her that amplified everything, the hush that fell when you became the wrong kind of presence. They passed a glass-walled office where a woman glanced up, then quickly looked back down. They passed a security guard who shifted his weight, watching. Todd led Loretta into a small consultation room with a table too shiny and chairs too stiff. A framed photograph of a golf course hung on the wall, green and empty. Todd sat first. Loretta sat opposite him, setting her folder on the table with care. He opened his laptop like a shield. "So," Todd said, exhaling, "you're here for a loan. Let's make this quick." Loretta's eyebrows rose slightly. "I'd like to make it right." Todd's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not the kind that offered warmth. "Right," he repeated. He clicked a few keys. "Your credit score is fine. Not exceptional. Your assets are limited. Your existing income is." Loretta watched him scan her life like it was a suspicious check. "I have collateral," Loretta said calmly. "The property on 5th and Juniper." Todd looked up sharply. "That property is in a distressed area." "It's in my neighborhood," Loretta replied. "And it's been in my family for 30 years. Todd's eyes narrowed, as if family ownership was a myth he didn't believe in. "The projected revenue for your business is optimistic. It's based on signed catering contracts," Loretta said. "Church events, school district lunches, a partnership with the clinic." Todd held up a hand. Ms. Gaines. Loretta stopped. He leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was about to do her a favor. You should understand, Todd said. Banks have to be responsible. We can't just hand out money because someone has a dream. Loretta met his gaze. It's not just a dream. Todd's eyes flicked to her scarf again, her hands, her face. At your age, starting a business is risky. There's a reason most people don't do it. Loretta's voice stayed even. Most people didn't live my life. Todd's jaw tightened. A beat. Then he shut the laptop, hard. I'm going to be honest, he said. This isn't going to happen. Loretta blinked slowly. Excuse me. Todd spread his hands. It's not personal. It's policy. The bank cannot approve a loan of this size with your profile. Loretta's fingers touched the folder. You haven't even looked at my full package. Todd's lips pressed together. Ms. Gaines. I brought my contracts, she said, opening the folder, sliding pages forward. My permits. My projections. Letters of support. A grant award contingent on matching funds. Todd didn't reach for them. He didn't even glance down. Instead, he pushed the folder back toward her with one finger, like he was nudging away a dirty plate. We're done here, Todd said. Loretta's eyes held steady, but something inside her chest tightened. Not like panic, not like surprise, but like the old ache of being told no by people who didn't even hear the question. She gathered the papers slowly. May I ask, Loretta said, what part of my profile disqualifies me? Todd's smile returned, small and sharp. You want me to say it out loud? Loretta froze for half a second. The air in the room changed. Todd's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Your type of business, he said. Your location. Your demographic. Loretta's throat moved as she swallowed. My demographic. Todd leaned back. Look, this is a private institution. We have standards. And frankly, this bank isn't here to fund. He searched for a word that wouldn't sound as ugly as the thought. He failed. Projects that aren't viable. Loretta's eyes didn't water. That's what made the moment so loud. She stood, folding the papers, placing them back into the folder with precision. Her hands didn't shake. Todd stood too, moving toward the door like he was escorting her out of a theater before she caused a scene. When Loretta stepped into the hallway, the glass-walled offices turned into an audience. Todd opened the consultation room door wide enough for people to see her leaving. Thank you for coming in, Todd said brightly, voice now performative. Please be careful on your way out. Loretta turned her head. I will. She started toward the lobby. Todd walked behind her, and in the lobby, the security guard began walking too. Not beside her, not politely. Behind her, close enough to be a message. Loretta stopped near the telecounter, turning back. Why is security following me? She asked, her voice clay. Todd didn't miss a beat. Standard procedure. We just want to make sure everything stays calm. Loretta's gaze shifted to the guard. The guard's hand hovered near his belt. Bystanders slowed. A few heads turned. The couple in athleisure stopped pretending they weren't watching. And then the small, bright rectangle appeared. A phone held up by a teenager near the ATM. The teen's eyes were wide, fixed on Loretta, fixed on Todd. Recording. The security guard said, voice firm. Please continue to the exit. Loretta's spine stayed straight. I'm not causing a disturbance, she said. Todd's smile tightened. Ms. Gaines, you've been told the decision. Let's not make this difficult. Loretta's eyes narrowed slightly. Difficult for who? Todd's cheeks colored. A woman near the coffee station whispered, oh my God. Someone else's phone lifted. Then another. A ripple in the air. The sound of attention turning into something heavier. Loretta's hands gripped her folder. She looked at Todd. I want my ID back, she said quietly. Todd's eyes flicked toward Kelsey. Kelsey hurried forward, holding Loretta's license like a reluctant apology. Loretta reached for it. Kelsey hesitated, then dropped it into Loretta's palm. Their fingers didn't touch. Loretta slid her license into her wallet without looking down. The lobby felt like a stage now. Todd's voice sharpened. Ms. Gaines, you need to leave. Loretta didn't move. She turned slightly, addressing the room, not him. I came here with documents, she said. With proof. With a plan. And I was refused before anyone even read my name on the paper. Todd's jaw clenched. This is inappropriate. Loretta's eyes met his. So is what you did. Todd's smile vanished. Security, he said. The guard stepped closer. The teenager near the ATM whispered to the phone, loud enough for others to hear. Yo, they are really doing this. Loretta's heart beat once, strong and steady. She lifted her chin and spoke in a voice that held the weight of decades. If you put your hands on me, she said to the guard, you will regret it. The guard paused. Todd's eyes widened a fraction, then narrowed again with irritation. Are you threatening my staff? Todd snapped. Loretta's gaze didn't waver. I'm promising you something you haven't considered. A hush. Phones were up now. 3, 4, 5. A woman in a red coat stepped closer, whispering, Is this Liv? The teenager nodded, eyes never leaving the scene. Yeah, it's live. Todd looked around, seeing the cameras, the watchers, the growing attention. For the first time, his confidence flickered, but he recovered quickly, puffing up with authority. He said louder, You are trespassing. If you do not leave immediately, we will call the police. Loretta's fingers tightened around the folder. She took one slow breath, and then she did something Todd didn't expect. She smiled. Not sweet, not soft, a smile like someone who knew the ending. She looked past Todd, toward the glass doors, toward the bright street beyond, and she said, almost to herself, 17 minutes. Todd blinked. What? Loretta's smile stayed. Nothing, she said, but her eyes gleamed with a quiet certainty that made the air vibrate. Because somewhere outside this polished lobby, something was already moving, and Todd Carver had no idea that his world was about to flip upside down. Loretta woke before dawn because her body had learned to trust morning more than people. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that held stories in its walls. The kitchen smelled faintly of flour and cinnamon because even when she slept, her life carried sweetness. She moved through the dark with practiced ease, turning on the kettle, measuring coffee grounds with a hand that didn't need a spoon. On the counter sat a folded napkin with a handwritten note in careful cursive. Today is for everything you've built. Walk like it. Loretta stayed at the note until her throat tightened. She knew the handwriting. She hadn't seen it in years. Not like this. Not on her counter like a ghost turned gentle. She set the kettle on the stove, staring at the flame as it caught. Then she opened the drawer beneath the oven and pulled out a worn recipe book, corners frayed, pages stained with history. She flipped to a page marked with an old ribbon. Sweet potato pie, Mama's way. Loretta's fingers traced the ink. Her mother's voice lived in those lines. Her own voice lived in the margins. Little adjustments. Notes about oven temps. Reminders like don't rush the butter and taste before you trust. Loretta had been 13 the first time she sold a pie. Not because she wanted to be an entrepreneur. Because the lights had been cut off again. Because her little brother cried when it got cold. Because her father was gone and her mother was tired and the world had not been kind. She had walked door to door with a pie wrapped in foil, offering sweetness like it was currency. Some people had bought it. Some people had looked at her like she was a nuisance. Some people had told her to go away. She had gone away. Then she had come back the next day. That was Loretta's kind of power. Not loud, not flashy, unrelenting. Years later, she worked 2 jobs, school cafeteria by day, nursing home by night, saving every extra dollar in a jar labeled future with tape. Her hands had served thousands of meals, wiped thousands of counters, soothed old women crying in the dark. She married once, divorced once, raised a son mostly by herself. Malcolm, he was a bright child with hungry eyes. The kind of hunger that didn't stop at food. He wanted books. He wanted answers. He wanted out. Loretta gave him everything she could. And when she ran out, she found more. She skipped meals so he could eat. She stitched his school pants when they tore. She sat at the kitchen table late at night, learning math she hadn't touched in decades so she could help him with homework. When Malcolm got accepted into a prestigious college across the country, Loretta cried in the bathroom so he wouldn't see. Because pride and fear can look the same when you're alone. She didn't have enough money for tuition. Not even close. So she did what she always did. She got up earlier, worked longer, sold pies on weekends. And on the day Malcolm left, she pressed a small envelope into his palm. "What's this?" he asked. Loretta smiled through tears. "A start." Malcolm opened it and froze. "Mama, this is—" "Don't count it," Loretta said quickly. "Just take it." "But I need you to go," she said, voice fierce. "I need you to become the kind of man who can come back and change what hurt us." Malcolm's eyes filled. "I will," he whispered. "I promise." Loretta believed him. But promises are fragile when life gets loud. Malcolm succeeded. Too much. Too fast. He built something in tech. Something people called disruptive. He became a headline. A billionaire. A name people whispered in rooms Loretta had never entered. At first he called every day. Then every week. Then every month. Then, sometimes, not at all. Loretta didn't blame him. Not fully. Success can be a distance. And distance can become a habit. But Loretta never stopped building. She started a small catering business out of her home. She cooked for funerals, weddings, graduations. She fed people when their hearts were too heavy to feed themselves. She became known for it. Gaines' Kitchen, a quiet legend in the neighborhood. When the local grocery closed, Loretta organized church members to start a weekly food pantry. When the school cut lunch funding, she volunteered to cook. When the clinic needed meals for patients who couldn't leave home, she delivered them herself, her old car smelling like warm bread. And now, at 68, she was ready to do what she had been doing her whole life, only bigger. A real storefront, a commercial kitchen, a place that could hire people, teach young ones, feed families, keep money circulating in the neighborhood instead of draining out like blood. She had contracts, support, a grant that would cover half. All she needed was the loan to match it. That was today. Loretta sipped her coffee, looking at the folder she'd assembled over months. It was thick with proof. And still, she knew what she was walking into. She'd been underestimated her whole life. She'd learned to carry herself like armor. Before she left, she stood in front of the small mirror by the door, adjusting her scarf. She looked at her face, lined, strong, beautiful in the way trees are beautiful after storms. "Not today," she whispered. She left the house and drove to Meridian Trust. And on the passenger seat, her phone buzzed once. A message from an unknown number. "I'm in town. Don't turn around. Just breathe." Loretta stayed at the screen so long she almost missed the green light. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. Her heart did something strange. It lifted, and somewhere deep inside, a clock began ticking. Todd Carver said, voice louder now, "This is your final warning. Leave or we call law enforcement." The security guard shifted closer, his shadow falling across Loretta's shoes. Loretta looked at him, then at Todd. Then she turned toward the cameras. "Record," she said, calm as stone. "Record everything." The teenager's phone shook slightly. "I got you." More people had gathered now. Customers, passers-by pulled in by the tension, employees hovering behind glass. A woman near the door whispered, "I'm posting this." Another voice, "This is messed up." Todd's face was tightening, a man who could feel control slipping but didn't know how to stop gripping. "Ms. Gaines," he snapped, "you have no right." Loretta cut him off, not by raising her voice, but by steadying it. "I have every right to stand where my money stands," she said. Todd scoffed. "Your money." Loretta didn't react. Todd took a step closer, trying to loom. "You're turning this into a spectacle," he said. "You came in here asking for a loan you don't qualify for, and now you're causing a scene because you didn't get your way." Loretta's eyes narrowed. "You refused me before you read my documents." Todd's voice sharpened. "Because we know the patterns. We know what succeeds and what doesn't." "Patterns," Loretta repeated softly, tasting the word. "That's what you call prejudice when you want it to sound like math." A murmur moved through the crowd. Phones held higher. The teen's livestream chat flashed in frantic pace, reflected in his glasses. He whispered, half to himself, "They're dragging her." Todd noticed the phones again and tried to recalibrate, His voice turned syrupy. He said, forcing calm, I'm sorry you feel disrespected, but we are done. If you do not exit, we will have to remove you. Loretta's gaze slid past him to the security guard. Remove me for what? For standing still. For asking questions. The guard's eyes flickered. Todd's smile cracked. For refusing to comply. A bystander, a man in a mechanic's jacket, stepped forward. She ain't done nothing. Todd shot him a look. Sir, this is none of your business. The man laughed bitterly. It is when you treat people like that. A woman near the door lifted her phone and spoke into it. I'm at Meridian Trust and they're trying to have this elderly black lady arrested because she asked about a loan. This is real. This is happening right now. Todd's face paled, then reddened. He pointed at the woman. You can't record in here. The woman raised her eyebrows. It's a public lobby. Todd turned to the security guard. Call the police. Loretta's heart beat once. 17 minutes. The teen's livestream chat began chanting in comments, like a digital crowd swelling around the physical one. #let her speak, #Meridian Trust, #banking while black. Todd didn't see the words, but he felt them, the way attention gathers like storm clouds. The security guard pulled out his radio. Loretta's voice cut through the tension like a bell. Before you do that, she said, looking at the guard, ask yourself who you're protecting. The guard hesitated. Todd snapped, do it. The guard raised the radio to his mouth. And then, the glass doors slid open again. A man entered, tall, calm, dressed in a simple black coat that somehow made the lobby look cheaper. His hair was close-cropped, his face composed, but his eyes held something dangerous in their stillness. Behind him walked two people in suits, one woman, one man, carrying leather portfolios. Behind them, another man with a tablet and an earpiece. Behind them, a fourth person holding a folder stamped with gold lettering. The lobby shifted. Even Todd paused, thrown off by the sudden gravity that entered with them. The man's gaze locked on Loretta, and Loretta's breath caught, just for a moment, before she pressed it back down. Malcolm, she whispered. Todd blinked. Excuse me. The man stepped forward, ignoring Todd completely, and walked straight to Loretta. He didn't touch her at first. He just looked at her, like he was making sure she was real. Then he spoke, voice low enough that it felt intimate, but clear enough to carry. I got your message, he said. Loretta's lips parted slightly. I didn't. Malcolm's eyes flicked to Todd, then to the security guard, then to the phones. 17 minutes, Malcolm said quietly. Loretta's face didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. Not relief. Recognition. Todd cleared his throat loudly, stepping forward to reclaim control. So, Todd said, forcing a professional smile, this is a private matter. If you're with Ms. Gaines, I suggest you escort her out before. Malcolm turned his head and looked at Todd like Todd was an inconvenience that had mistaken itself for a wall. Who are you? Malcolm asked. Todd's smile twitched. I'm Todd Carver, branch manager. Malcolm said, as if tasting something bitter. He glanced at the woman beside him in a suit. Is he still employed? The woman opened her portfolio smoothly. Yes, she said. For now. Todd's smile widened, confused. Excuse me, what is this? Malcolm stepped forward, speaking louder now, so the lobby could hear. My name is Malcolm Gaines, he said. And as of, he glanced at his watch, 17 minutes ago, my firm acquired a controlling interest in Meridian Trust. Silence fell so fast it felt like the building lost oxygen. Todd froze. That's impossible. The suited man behind Malcolm stepped forward, holding up the folder with the gold stamp. Board resolution, he said crisply. Effective immediately. Todd's eyes darted to the folder like it was a weapon. Phones tilted higher. The teen near the ATM whispered into his live stream, voice shaking. Yeah, he just said he bought the bank. A woman gasped, hand over her mouth. Todd's voice cracked. This is a joke. Malcolm's eyes didn't blink. It's not, he said. Todd swallowed. Even if that were true, you can't just walk in here and... Malcolm cut him off with a small tilt of his head. Yes, he said. I can. He turned slightly, addressing the room. For anyone recording, Malcolm said, keep recording. Don't stop, because accountability needs witnesses. Todd's face went pale. Malcolm looked back at Loretta, voice softening for half a second. Are you okay? Loretta nodded once. I'm fine. Malcolm's jaw tightened, the muscle in his cheek pulsing once. Then he turned to Todd. Did you deny my mother a loan? Malcolm asked. Todd sputtered. She doesn't qualify. Did you read her documents? Malcolm asked. Todd's eyes flicked away. Malcolm's voice sharpened. Did you read them? Todd's voice rose defensively. We have procedures. Malcolm stepped closer, closing the space like a door. You humiliated her, Malcolm said. In public. Todd bristled. She caused a disruption. She stood still, Malcolm replied. Todd's eyes flashed, desperate. You can't fire me on a whim. Malcolm nodded, like he was acknowledging a child's misunderstanding. Not on a whim, Malcolm said. On course. He turned to the woman in the suit. Execute. The woman stepped forward, voice clear and formal. Todd Carver, she said, your employment with Meridian Trust is terminated effective immediately. You are to surrender your credentials and vacate the premises. Todd's mouth fell open. The room held its breath. Todd's eyes darted wildly, searching for someone to save him. Employees, security, anyone. No one moved. Malcolm's gaze swept over the telecounter. Kelsey, he said, reading her name tag like he'd already memorized it. Kelsey flinched. Yes, she squeaked. You withheld my mother's identification and implied she needed someone else to qualify for respect, Malcolm said. Correct. Kelsey's face drained. I didn't. Malcolm didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He looked at the suited man with a folder. Terminate the branch staff, Malcolm said. The words hit the lobby like a body hitting water. A collective gasp. Someone whispered, Oh my God. Todd barked, You can't do that. Malcolm's eyes stayed cold. Watch. The woman in the suit began reading names from a list, each one crisp, final. The assistant manager, the loan officer, the tellers, the security guard. Effective immediately, she repeated, each time, like a drumbeat of consequence. Kelsey started crying. The security guard's hand dropped from his belt. Todd's face contorted, anger and disbelief fighting for space. This is insane, Todd hissed. You're ruining people's lives. Malcolm's eyes flicked to him. No, he said quietly. You did. You just assumed there would never be a receipt. A silence thick enough to drown in. Phones kept recording. The teens' livestream chat exploded, but no one needed it. The moment was already carved into the air. Loretta stood still, folder in hand. Her expression didn't glow with triumph. It held something deeper. Grief. Because even justice can hurt when it reveals how ugly the world has been all along. And then Loretta lifted a hand gently. Stop, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Malcolm turned to her immediately, like her words still anchored him. Loretta looked at the sobbing employees, the stunned bystanders, the frozen manager who had tried to erase her. She inhaled slowly. Bring me a chair, she said. Someone moved instantly. One of Malcolm's team, pulling a chair forward. Loretta sat, calm in the middle of the chaos like a lighthouse in a storm. She looked at Todd. Now, she said, we're going to talk. The footage hit the internet before the police could even finish their first sip of coffee. A clip titled Elderly Black Woman Denied Loan. Then her son buys the bank ricocheted across platforms like a spark in dry grass. People slowed down at stoplights to watch. People pulled over. People cried in break rooms. People laughed in disbelief, then stopped laughing when Loretta's face filled the screen. Calm, dignified, tired of being doubted. Within hours, Meridian Trust's public relations team released a statement full of empty words. We do not tolerate discrimination. We are investigating. But the investigation didn't belong to them anymore. Regulators took notice. Journalists dug up history. Former employees came forward with stories, patterns, whispered policies, coded language about risk profiles that always seemed to land on the same kind of people. A finance reporter posted a thread showing data, loans approved in affluent zip codes, denied in poorer ones, a map that looked like an old scar. The bank stock price dipped, then slid. A class action attorney posted, "If you have been denied BY Meridian Trust, contact us." The comments section became a testimony. They said my business wasn't viable. They told me I needed a cosigner. They approved my coworker with worse credit. They smiled while they crushed me. Inside Meridian Trust, the board went into emergency meetings. Some directors tried to spin it as a rogue branch. Malcolm refused. "It's never just one branch," he told them, voice flat. "It's never just one person. It's a culture." He ordered audits. Not the kind that could be massaged. The kind that exposed. He hired an independent firm to review lending practices, complaint records, internal emails. He ordered the termination of more than a few people, executives, compliance officers, regional managers. But he didn't stop there. He froze executive bonuses. He redirected funds into a community lending initiative. He demanded transparency. And because the world was watching, the bank had no place to hide. The fired branch staff became a headline too. Some people cheered, saying, "Finally." Some people argued online, "That's too harsh." And in the middle of it all, Loretta sat at her kitchen table, watching her own face go viral like it belonged to someone else. She listened to strangers analyze her life in comment sections. She saw her name twisted into memes and slogans. She saw people arguing about reverse discrimination, as if dignity had directions. Malcolm sat across from her, elbows on the table, hands clasped. "I didn't want you to see that," he admitted quietly. "I didn't want you to have to carry it." Loretta sipped tea, eyes steady. "I've carried worse." Malcolm's throat moved. "I should have come back sooner." Loretta looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "You came back now." But her voice held a truth that cut deeper than blame. "Now is late, but it's still time." Malcolm's eyes filled, but he didn't let the tears fall. Not yet. Outside, the neighborhood buzzed with something unfamiliar. Hope. People drove past the Fifth and Juniper property and pointed. "That's going to be Loretta's place." Kids talked about it like it was already open. Elders smiled like they'd been waiting their whole lives. But there were consequences too. Threatening messages. Racist comments. People who didn't know Loretta telling her she was lucky like she hadn't owned anything. A man at the grocery store muttered, "Must be nice to have a rich son," as if Loretta's decades of labor were invisible. Loretta didn't reply. She just kept pushing her cart, shoulders straight. Because being loud wasn't her style. Being unbreakable was. 2 days after the incident, Meridian Trust held a press conference. Not because they wanted to. Because they had to. Cameras lined the sidewalk like teeth. Microphones waited. Reporters shouted questions before anyone spoke. On the stage stood Malcolm, flanked by lawyers and executives who looked like they'd swallowed rocks. And then Loretta walked up. The crowd quieted in a way that felt like respect learning how to behave. Loretta stepped to the podium. She placed her hands on either side of it, fingers steady. Her scarf was the same marigold color. Her eyes were tired, but bright. She looked at the cameras, and for a moment, she didn't speak. She just let the silence do what silence does when it's finally owned by the right person. Then she said, softly, "I want to tell you something." Her voice carried without effort. "I've been told no my whole life," Loretta said. Some of those no's were fair. Some of them were protective. And some of them were poison. A murmur moved through the crowd. Loretta continued. "When I walked into that bank, I didn't walk in asking for pity. I didn't walk in asking for a favor. I walked in asking for a fair look at the work I've already done." She paused, and I didn't get that. Her eyes lifted slightly, meeting the lens like she was speaking to each person watching alone in their phone glow. "People keep asking me if I'm angry," she said. "A beat. I'm not angry," Loretta said. "Anger is heavy, and I've carried enough weight in my life." She let that land. "What I am," she said, "is clear." She turned her head slightly, looking at the bank behind her. "Bias doesn't always wear a hood," Loretta said. "Sometimes it wears a name tag. Sometimes it wears a tie. Sometimes it smiles while it decides you don't belong." The reporters stopped shouting. Even the city noise seemed to lower itself. Loretta's voice stayed calm. You can build a whole life and still be treated like you just showed up, she said. You can do everything right and still be questioned because of what you look like, where you come from, how old you are, how you speak. She inhaled slowly. And if you're watching this and thinking, that's sad, then I want to ask you to go one step further. Her eyes sharpened, not with cruelty, but with truth. Don't just feel sad, Loretta said. Feel responsible. A hush. Because systems don't change when people feel bad, she continued. Systems change when people decide they are done accepting what's wrong as normal. Loretta's hands tightened gently on the podium. Now, about what happened in that branch, she said. People lost jobs. And I want to say this carefully. She looked down for a moment, then back up. Consequences are not the same as revenge, Loretta said. A consequence is what happens when a choice finally meets the truth. She let the words sit. I don't want anyone destroyed, she said. I want everyone awakened. Her voice softened, and the softness carried power like deep water. I want bankers to remember they are holding people's futures in their hands, Loretta said. I want security to remember that keeping order isn't the same as keeping justice. I want managers to remember that dignity doesn't need permission. She paused, eyes glistening now, not tears spilling, but a shine that made her humanity undeniable. And I want every person who has ever been turned away, talked down to, or made to feel small, Loretta said, to know this: you are not wrong for wanting better. You are not foolish for trying. And you are not invisible. Behind her, Malcolm's throat tightened. Loretta's voice stayed steady. Kindness is not weakness, she said. Fairness is not charity. And respect should never be something you have to earn twice. She stepped back from the podium. Then she leaned forward one last time, as if sharing a secret with the whole world. If you are in a position to decide someone else's future, Loretta said, choose to be the reason they keep going, not the reason they give up. She straightened and walked away. The cameras kept rolling. The crowd didn't clap at first. It was too heavy for applause. Then someone did. Slow. One clap. Then another. Then the whole sidewalk turned into thunder. Spring arrived like it had heard the story and decided to be gentle. On 5th and Juniper, the old building no longer looked like a forgotten shell. Fresh paint brightened the brick. New windows reflected the sky. A sign hung above the door in bold, elegant lettering. Gaines Community Kitchen and Market. Inside, the air smelled like yeast, warm spices, roasted vegetables, and something else, possibility. The commercial kitchen gleamed with new stainless steel. Young people in aprons moved with purpose, learning knife skills, learning recipes, learning that they belonged in places that once told them they didn't. Loretta walked through the space slowly, like someone walking through a dream they built with their own hands. A teenage girl approached her, wiping flour from her cheek. Ms. Gaines, the girl said, smiling wide, the bread came out perfect. Loretta peeked at the trays, eyes bright. That's because you listened to the dough. The girl laughed. The dough talks. Loretta's smile softened. Everything talks if you stop acting like you're the only voice that matters. In the front market, shelves held local goods, honey, jams, handmade soaps, produce from neighborhood gardens. People came in not just to buy, but to linger, to talk, to be seen. On the wall near the entrance, framed neatly, hung a simple plaque. Dignity is good credit. Next to it, a photo, Loretta at the press conference, hands on the podium, eyes steady. Under the photo, another line. Choose to be the reason. Across town, Meridian Trust looked different too. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't perfect, but it was altered. A community advisory board now reviewed lending practices. Loan officers underwent bias training that wasn't just a video and a checkbox. Data about approvals and denials was published publicly. A dedicated fund supported businesses in underserved neighborhoods, with transparent criteria, clear timelines, and real accountability. Some people called it rebranding. Loretta called it pressure, because she knew change didn't come from kindness alone. It came from people refusing to be quiet. And in the shadow of the old branch manager's downfall, other banks took notice. Competitors quietly adjusted their policies, not because they suddenly grew hearts, but because they didn't want their names trending next. Todd Carver didn't disappear. He gave an interview months later, eyes tired, voice defensive, insisting he'd been misunderstood. But the world had receipts. The clip still lived online, immortal. People still watched it and felt something crack open. Sometimes shame, sometimes rage, sometimes clarity. And Malcolm, he showed up more, not just with money, but with presence. He sat at Loretta's table again. He washed dishes without being asked. He attended community meetings and listened more than he spoke. One evening, Loretta found him in the kitchen after closing, staring at the empty ovens. "You okay?" she asked. Malcolm exhaled. "I keep thinking about how close I came to never coming back." Loretta leaned against the counter. "And what do you think now?" Malcolm swallowed. "I think I let success convince me I didn't owe my own roots anything." Loretta nodded slowly. "Roots don't ask for permission. They just keep holding you up." Malcolm's eyes glistened. "I'm sorry." Loretta studied him. Then she reached out and placed her hand on his cheek, an old gesture, gentle and firm. "I didn't need you rich," she said softly. "I needed you awake." Malcolm closed his eyes for a moment, like the words were a weight and a gift. Outside, the neighborhood hummed with life. Kids rode bikes past the storefront. An elder couple walked hand in hand. Someone laughed loudly across the street. And inside Gaines' community kitchen, Loretta Gaines, 68, steady, unbreakable, kept doing what she'd always done. Feeding people, building something that outlived rejection, turning no into nourishment. When you see someone being doubted, dismissed, or quietly pushed toward the exit, do you keep walking? Or do you become the reason the story turns?